Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Inside Guns with your host, me, the Yankee Marshal. Today, I want to respond to a question that I got in the live chat the other night. Now, when you first think about this question, when you first hear it, it might seem a bit inflammatory. And the question I got was, how do gun owners and pro-Second Amendment people stop their children from becoming mass shooters? You can see where I said that might be a little inflammatory because it does kind of imply that there is a greater chance, if you're a pro-Second Amendment person, that your child will be unbalanced and become a mass shooter. A mass murderer actually is the correct term. But they'll use a firearm to do it. Well, I'm going to take these people at face value, and I'm going to say they asked a legitimate question, and they really want to know the answer to it. So I'm going to try to answer it tonight. Because after they asked the question, I got interested. I started looking up on the internet. And of course, I found several posts and claims and, little study stuff that would imply that if you are a pro-Second Amendment family, a gun-owning family, it is far more likely that your child will go off the deep end and commit a heinous act, like a mass shooting. But I think that is more just correlation than anything else. And I think people are trying to present correlation as causation. They're trying to say that if you're a pro-Second Amendment family, there's a greater chance you'll have an unbalanced child, when I don't think that's the case. I think it's all families probably have unbalanced children at the same rate. But in the rare instance that unbalanced child has access to firearms, well, they can do some damage because that's what firearms are designed for. Just like if they had access to dynamite, because you were an old-timey miner or something. Or if your family were blacksmiths and, they drop an anvil on someone's head, like in a Warner Brothers cartoon, they have more access to anvils. Doesn't mean that blacksmith kids go crazy more often, to use a very technical term there. I think it's just a matter of correlation. They have access to guns, and it's very rare. It's one of those cases where, if you have a 1 in a million chance of your kid going wrong, well, then one of those 100,000 kids eventually will probably be in a gun-owning family that actually has access to the guns. And you'll have a very rare event that you'll be able to say is, oh, it's such a bad thing and it happens far more likely from people who own guns. Even though it's super rare, it almost never happens, if you understand what I'm saying. But I want to address the question, how do you stop your kids from doing things like that? Let's just assume you own guns. You don't want your kids to do that. Well, first off, don't give access to your guns to your kids. That's pretty simple. Just don't, unless they've proven they can handle it. And if you want to know how you can make your kids to where they can handle it, the answer is be a parent. Be a good parent. Provide your child a stable home. Not a home where anger and paranoia, etc., are the mantra of the family. Because kids pick up on that, and they're raised in that. And if you're one of these people that sees a conspiracy theory in everything, and you're paranoid about everything, even though you yourself might be able to keep it in check in your head because you're mature, children grow up thinking that's the way the world is. It's horrible, and everyone's a monster, and they're going to get me eventually. So don't be like that. That's one thing to do. Don't raise your children in an environment of paranoia, fear, anger, etc. And so many people in the extremes on both sides nowadays live their life from crisis to crisis, from one thing to be angry about to the next thing to be angry about, from one group of people to dislike to another group of people to dislike. Don't raise your kids like that. You're really doing them an injustice. Another thing is, be there for your kids. Like I say, just be a good parent. Not only don't raise them in a bad environment, but always let them know that you are their parent and you are their safety net. I see so many parents that are this, as soon as you're 18, you're out of my fucking house. You think that does a lot of good for a kid? A kid at 18, 17 years old, and he's like, oh, fuck, I'm out of the house in 3 months. I've got no skills. I'm not even out of high school yet. You think that might drive someone to do something crazy? It might. So don't do shit like that. Not even jokingly. Kids, sometimes that stuff goes to heart with them. Let them know you have their back. Don't put excessive pressure on them that you better know what you're doing for a living when you're 18 because you're out of here. No, don't do that. Don't push your own insecurities on your kids. People ask me all the time, well, why are you giving your kids that? You think you're spoiling them? Did you get that when you were that age? I'm like, no, I didn't. I also didn't get a lot of love or attention. And I don't want, and call me crazy, but I want my kids' childhood to be better than mine. I want to be a little bit better parent than my parents were because they were a little bit better parents than their parents, and so on. When you get back to my great-grandmother, she's mean as hell to her kids. She had like 15 of them, and she didn't care about that much about any individual one of them. So I just want to be a little better parent than my parents, and I want my kids' life to be better than mine. And you should let your kids know that all the time, that you want the best for them. And that doesn't always mean letting them have their way or being super sweet to them. Sometimes you have to be stern with them. But you always let them know why. Not just because I said so. It's because I care. And this is a mistake I made that I don't want you making. Also, like I said, don't put too much pressure on them. Say, hey, you're going to go to high school. You're going to graduate. You're probably going to go to college. And you don't have to decide what you're going to do right off. Get your go to community college. Get your prerequisites out of the way first. Give you a couple more years, or maybe 3 or 4 more years, to think about what you really want to do with your life. Don't put undue pressure on them. It's no need for it. And no, it doesn't make stronger, better kids. That's bullshit. People look back on the 50s and the 60s and 40s and everything and think with rose-colored glasses and think everyone was so strong and everyone was doing well. No, they were not. A lot of people didn't do well at all. A lot of people ended up in jail. A lot of people ended up homeless. A lot of people end up everywhere. A lot of people end up doing shit that they hate for the rest of their life, and they become bitter, angry people because of the way they were treated when they were young. I don't want my kids to grow up bitter and angry. My grandfather's generation, they call them the greatest generation, but they were also one of the most angry generations I've ever seen. They hated almost everything because of what they'd been through. So I don't want my kids to grow up like that. So don't put undue pressure on your kids. And also, like I said, it doesn't always mean being good to them. If your child has a problem, recognize it and say, my kid has a problem. He needs therapy. I can't provide him what he needs. And then you let them know you need some extra care. It's something I can't do. We're going to get it for you because we care about you. That's the better way to do things. So many parents ignore the problems their children have because they think it'll look poorly on me if they have problems. No, it looks poorly on you when they have problems and you don't do anything about it and it gets out of hand. That's the whole Newtown shooting right there. She knew her kid was fucked up. Rather than deal with him, she just gave him whatever he wanted, and then he did what he did. Recognize if your kid has problems. Work to fix them. Don't pretend they don't exist. Be a parent. Parents don't always get to do the easy thing. So those are the things you have to do. It's just about being involved in your kids' lives. This is all just basic child rearing 101. People look at me and they go, well, you've got a degree in psychology, so this is the kind of thing that's in your wheelhouse. Well, it's not really, because being a good parent isn't just about psychology. It's just about being a parent. You don't have to have a degree in psychology to be a parent. You just have to love your children. You have to want better for your children. You want your children to have a better life than you had. I don't want my kids being like I was, feeling like I got to find something to do. I got to find a job. I got to get an education and struggle, fight, and end up with a list of jobs I tried that I hate, and years of my life that I wasted, and an education that I don't even use. The last of my life, I started doing the things I enjoyed that I wish I'd have started doing right out of high school and made more money doing it. So I don't want my kids to do that. I don't want them to be forced into something they don't like and have to be stuck with it the rest of their life and become bitter. And that's all it is. It's just take care of your kids, good and the bad. Don't ignore the bad. Deal with it. And don't, scrimp on the good. Your chances of spoiling your kid, unless you're super wealthy, are small. I try to give my kids everything they need and then a lot of the stuff they want. And my kids aren't horrible. They're caring. They're kind. That's what you get when you give kids love. You get it back in return. When you treat your kids with hostility and resentment and anger, or raise them, like I said, with paranoia, etc., you get damaged kids because you didn't care for them. That's what happens. And that's right or left. That doesn't have anything to do with your political affiliation. It's got to do with you as a parent. So if you want your kids to grow up and not become mass shooters, the answer, like I said, is easy. Just be a parent. Let them know you're their safety net. Even if they're 30 years old, I tell my kids, I don't care if you're 30, you're getting a divorce, you're losing your job, your home's being repossessed. All you got to say to yourself, well, I'm going home. I'm going back home. I'm going to go back to my old bedroom, live with my parents, because my parents would love to have me. That makes it so much easier for people to take chances and succeed when they know they can fail, because they have parents that will take care of them, will help them back onto their feet, will provide them the tools and the abilities to do that. Because when you don't let your kids fail, when you teach them that failure is the end, well, like I said, they end up stuck in some mundane garbage job that they hate forever, and they grow up to be bitter people with 3 marriages, etc. Just be a good parent. That's all it takes. If you don't want your kids to go down the wrong path, show them the right path to go down, and then let them know you'll be with them the whole way. All right, everybody, I went a little long with that, but I do want to kind of do the rant that I promised everybody yesterday, although I'm not as mad now as I was yesterday. But I want to talk about price gouging. And we've talked about it in the gun community, the ammo community, etc., how some shops raised their prices and some didn't, etc., and how it's the free market, and that's how it works, and that is how it works. But, like I said, price gouging is price gouging. I don't like it. And I went out there today to look at a car. I looked at I won't say the name of the business. Let's just say they're in Vancouver, and their name rhymes with Schmenesis. And I was looking at a car that rhymes with G. Schmeventy. And it had a sticker price of $54,000. It had 800 and something miles on it because it'd been on the lot for a long time, ever since they first got released, and it'd been test driven a lot. Well, I went in and said, we can do the right numbers on this. I'll take it. And they're like, cool, let's go. What do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I don't want to pay any more a month than I'm paying now. I want to be able to pay extra, and I want to be able to pay it off early because I'll probably go trade it in a year. They're like, not a problem. Well, they come back a few minutes later with all the paperwork. Like, they were like, we're just ready to sign. And I'm like, well, that payment looks awful high for, why did you finance it 72 months? I didn't want to go 72 months. And why is that payment still so high? Oh, that's the interest rate. I'm like, what interest rate? Well, 1.9. I'm like, well, then something's wrong here. What are you actually charging me for the car? Turned out they were charging me $58,000 and something for the car. Because not only were they not taking anything off for the fact that it was almost used, it had so many miles on it, and had so many asses in the seats, but they were tacking on another $4,000 for market adjustment and an extra $500 for destination because of, it's so hard to get cars now, which is true. It is. The market's bad right now for cars. There's a chip shortage, production shortage, shipping shortage. There's all kinds of things going on right now. Perfect storm to hurt the car industry. But I don't like it when they try to take advantage of people. Because I asked him, I was like, in that case, are you all giving market adjustment on trade-ins? Because trade-ins are really trade-ins now are getting full MSRP being sold with like 10,000 miles on them. I contacted Vroom about my car, and it's like, I'll get back more than what I owe on it, even though I only had it for 6 months. Because cars right now, their value is so high. So I'm like, well, are you going to give a market adjustment on the used cars? And he's like, well, no, we couldn't do that. And I'm like, well, then what you're doing is price gouging. I was like, imagine if you were doing what you're doing with this car and you sold water and there had just been a natural disaster and you decided, well, water's rare now, I'm jacking the price up 500%. Be like, what you'd be doing is committing a crime. And at the very best, you're profiteering. You're taking advantage of someone who could be a loyal customer. I could have been a loyal customer. I trade my car in every year. That's the one big expense I have in my life is I trade my car in every year because I love to drive different cars. So they could have you never know. I could have bought the Genesis G70 and maybe I'm doing better in a year or so. I buy a Genesis G80, maybe a GV70. I could have went through 5 or 6 cars there. But I won't ever darken their doorstep again because they tried that bullshit. That adding money on simply because it's hard for you to get one right now. That's not the job of a retailer. I can understand if someone has an item that they bought themselves, they're not a retailer, they don't have contracts with distributors or manufacturers, and they say, wow, this gun I bought for $500 or this car I bought for $5,000 is now worth twice that, and then they sell it at that. That's one item. But when the dealers, which are the distribution point from the manufacturers and the distributors, start doing that, well, then you're fucking manipulating the market and you're taking advantage of your customers. So I just wanted to say that because, like I said, did I say the words of the name of the manufacturer? I said Schminesis when I lived in. I hope I didn't say their actual name because I don't want anyone to think that I'm slamming the Schminesis Vancouver dealership over there across from the Ford dealership near the mall. Because that's not my intention. Just want to let you know the practices that they involve in, and it's price gouging, by the way. And I called other dealers that are dealers that I like that I've bought from before, and I'm like, are you adding a big markup on your cars right now? And they're like, oh, well, it's tempting, but no, we like to keep our loyal customers. One of the car lots I tend to deal with a lot, so I'm going over there tomorrow and look at a Mustang, actually. Not the Mach-E, a regular Mustang. Well, a GT Premium. But like I said, that's what I want to rant about. This fucking profiteering in business, it's just gotten out of hand, and it's just, as far as I'm concerned, it's vile. If, like I said, secondary market, that's one thing. If a secondary market goes higher, fine. But when dealers and distributors who have the direct line to the manufacturers start trying to manipulate prices, that's not a good thing. I don't like it. That's not free market. Free market is where the buyer has the power. Things are worth what people will pay for them, not what someone who gets complete control of the inventory decides they're worth. That's not free market. So, wanted to bitch about that. So, got it out of the way now. I'm done. And like I said, I will never step into a Schminesis dealership ever again. All right, everybody, that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you come back again tomorrow. Until then, I just want to sign off as usual by saying, as far as the state of the world today is concerned, it is what it is. It could definitely be a lot worse, but it could still be better. And if we as a community start doing what we need to do and start ignoring the profiteers, the fearmongers, the fake activists, the people who just want to line their pockets while pretending to serve the community and the Second Amendment, if we ignore those people and do what we need to do, what things will be for people who believe in the Second Amendment and love freedom in general in the very near future is better.